You are partially blind. Not in any way a doctor would diagnose. Not in any way you have ever noticed or been told about. But right now, in this moment, as you read these words, there is an entire dimension of the visible world that is completely invisible to you. Colors that exist in the light falling on your hands, on the trees outside your window, on the faces of people you have known for years. Colors that are genuinely, physically present in the world, that bounce off every surface you have ever looked at, that have been there your entire life. You have never seen a single one of them. And the bird sitting on the wire outside your window right now is swimming in them. What birds see, what is actually, physically happening in their visual experience of the world, is so different from human vision that describing it requires dismantling something you have probably never questioned. The assumption that what you see is what is there, that the world you perceive is the world that exists. That vision, as you experience it, is a reasonably complete report of reality rather than a narrow, filtered, heavily edited slice of something vastly larger. It is a slice, a very narrow one. And what lives on the other side of that slice, what birds are seeing when they look at the same world you are looking at, what their experience of reality actually contains, is one of the most quietly stunning discoveries in modern sensory biology. It will not leave you. Once you understand what a bird sees, you will never look at the ordinary world the same way again. Because the ordinary world, it turns out, was never ordinary. You just couldn't see it. Human vision is built on 3 types of color receptors. 3. We call them cones, and they are sensitive to roughly red, green, and blue wavelengths of light. Everything you have ever seen, every color you have ever perceived, every sunset, every painting, every face, was constructed by your brain from the signals of those 3 cone types, blending and comparing them to produce the full range of color experience you assume is comprehensive. 3 types of cones, millions of colors. Birds have 4. The 4th cone type is sensitive to ultraviolet light, wavelengths that exist just beyond the edge of what the human visual system can detect. And the addition of a 4th receptor does not simply add a few new colors to the existing palette. It transforms the entire color space. It multiplies the number of distinguishable colors exponentially. It means that birds are not seeing a slightly enhanced version of what you see. They are seeing a different world. Researchers studying bird plumage discovered this in a way that quietly devastated their previous understanding. For decades, ornithologists had classified certain bird species as sexually monomorphic, meaning males and females looked identical. Same coloring. No visible difference. This was used to explain various behavioral puzzles about mate selection in those species, because if you can't tell the sexes apart visually, how do the birds manage it? The answer, when UV vision was properly accounted for, was almost embarrassing in its simplicity. The birds looked nothing alike. Under ultraviolet light, in the range that birds see clearly and humans see not at all, male and female birds that appeared identical to human researchers were dramatically, unmistakably different. Different UV reflective patterns on their feathers. Different signals, apparently designed precisely for communication in a visual frequency range that no predator with only 3 cone types could intercept. They had been having an entire visual conversation, right in front of the researchers, for decades, in a language that required only eyes to read, and that human eyes are constitutionally incapable of reading. And this was not a minor finding limited to one species. As researchers began systematically studying UV reflectance in bird plumage across species, the discoveries accumulated faster than anyone had anticipated. Flowers that appear simple and uniform to human eyes reveal elaborate UV patterns to bird pollinators, landing guides, nectar markers, visual instructions written in a frequency we cannot access. Fruits that seem identically colored to human eyes are dramatically different in UV reflectance, allowing birds to assess ripeness through information we cannot see. Spider webs reflect UV light in patterns that attract insects, and birds have learned to read those patterns to find feeding locations that are, to us, completely invisible. The world is written in a language with 4 letters. Humans can only read 3 of them. But the 4th cone is only the beginning, because the mechanism behind bird color vision does not stop at adding a receptor. What the bird brain does with the signals from those 4 receptors, how it processes, combines, and constructs experience from that information, is something even more extraordinary. And researchers who have spent years studying it describe a quality of color experience in birds that has no human equivalent and no adequate human language. What happened next in the research was something no one was fully prepared for. Here is a thought experiment that matters. Imagine trying to describe the color red to someone who has been blind from birth. Not the emotional associations of red, not warmth, not urgency, not passion. The pure sensory experience of the color itself. Qualia. What red actually is as an experience. You cannot do it. There is no language for the direct experience of a color that does not involve other colors or associations or comparisons that themselves require color experience to understand. Now extend this thought experiment. When birds process the signals from 4 cone types simultaneously, when their visual system combines UV information with the standard range of visible light in real time, the resulting color experience is, by the mathematics of sensory combination, categorically richer than anything available to the human visual system. There are color distinctions birds can make that have no human analog, not because humans lack the words for them, but because humans lack the experience of them. They are colors that exist in the physical world, that are present in every ray of light, that have always been there, and that no human has ever seen. Researchers call these non-spectral colors. Colors produced by the simultaneous stimulation of cone combinations that the human visual system simply does not have. Tetrachromatic color spaces include hues that are, in a very literal sense, beyond human imagination. Not because they are hypothetical, because they are real perceptual experiences available to birds and structurally unavailable to us. The bird looking at you right now is seeing colors in your face that you have never seen in any face. UV reflective patterns in your skin, subtle variations in the reflectance of your hair and eyes, information written in frequencies you have no receptor to receive. To the bird, you are visually richer than you have ever been to yourself. There are aspects of your physical appearance, real, physical, light-based aspects, that you will never see. And this is before accounting for the other sensory capabilities that bird vision contains. Because color is only one dimension of what makes bird sight extraordinary. What researchers discovered about the structural qualities of bird vision, the speed, the resolution, the spatial processing, revealed something that made the UV story look almost modest by comparison. Time moves differently for a bird. Not metaphorically, physiologically, perceptually, in a way that has been measured, quantified, and confirmed. And that reveals something about the experience of being a bird that is, once understood, impossible to forget. The concept researchers use is called flicker fusion rate, the speed at which a visual system can process individual frames of visual information before they blur together into continuous motion. Human flicker fusion rate is approximately 60 frames per second. This is why film and television work. We cannot distinguish individual frames at that speed, so we perceive continuous motion rather than a rapid sequence of still images. Most birds have flicker fusion rates between 100 and 140 frames per second. Some species are considerably higher. What this means, in experiential terms, is that birds are processing visual information at roughly twice the speed of the human visual system. The world, from a bird's perceptual perspective, moves in slow motion compared to ours. Events that appear instantaneous to you, a falling leaf, a moving insect, a ball thrown through the air, are unfolding, for a bird, with a temporal resolution that allows detailed observation of each phase of the movement. A hummingbird hovering at a flower is not performing some extraordinary feat of aerial precision guided by rough motion detection. It is watching the individual movements of its own wings, the precise oscillation of the flower in wind, the detailed behavior of the insects nearby, all in a temporal resolution that makes our visual experience of the same scene look like a blurry, slow, informationally impoverished approximation. When a crow watches you walk past and makes a decision about whether you are a threat, the visual information it is working from is not the same information your brain would process if you watched a video of yourself walking past. The crow is seeing more frames, more detail, more temporal resolution, more of what your body is actually doing between the moments you are consciously aware of. The micro-expressions, the slight hesitations, the tiny inconsistencies between your intended behavior and your actual behavior, playing out in the fractions of a second your own visual system would smooth over and miss. The bird sees those, and it decides things based on them. But there is one more layer to bird vision that makes everything else we have discussed feel like prologue. Because researchers studying bird navigation discovered something that required them to reconsider not just what birds see, but where they see it. Something that has no equivalent in human sensory experience, and that points toward a quality of perceptual reality in birds that borders, in the most literal scientific sense, on the extraordinary. Birds can see magnetic fields, not detect them, the way a compass needle detects them. See them, visually, as a quality of the visual field itself. The mechanism, identified through decades of research and finally confirmed at the molecular level, involves a protein called cryptochrome, embedded in the photoreceptors of the bird's eye. When light hits this protein, it triggers a quantum mechanical reaction, a genuine quantum effect, operating at the level of individual electrons, that is sensitive to the orientation of the Earth's magnetic field. And crucially, this sensitivity feeds directly into the visual processing system. It does not produce a separate non-visual sensation. It modifies the visual experience itself. Researchers believe birds may perceive magnetic field information as a visual overlay, a pattern, a shading, a something embedded in what they see that shifts as their orientation relative to the magnetic field changes. A visual quality that changes as they turn and tilt, that gives them a constant, real-time, visually integrated map of their position relative to the Earth's magnetic poles. They are not reading an invisible signal. They are seeing something that is invisible to us, a feature of the physical world that exists everywhere, at all times, that has been present in every landscape you have ever stood in, and that you have never had even the faintest perceptual access to. The migrating bird crossing a continent at night is not navigating by memory or instinct alone. It is reading a map written in the magnetic field of the Earth with eyes that were built to see it. A map that exists in the same physical space as everything else you can see, layered into the visual world like a second image on a double exposure, permanently present and permanently invisible to every human who has ever lived. We have been sharing a world with creatures that see it in dimensions we cannot access. For the entirety of human existence, we assumed, because we could not see those dimensions, that they were not there. They were always there. And the bird has always been navigating by them, seeing them, living in a visual reality that contains everything we can see, and entire regions of experience that we cannot. Pull back from science for a moment, not to leave it behind, but to feel the full weight of what it means. You have lived your entire life in a world that is visually richer than you have ever experienced it. The colors are more numerous. The motion is more detailed. The magnetic architecture of the planet is a visible feature of the landscape. The UV patterns on flowers and faces and feathers are elaborate and present and meaningful. All of it has been there, in the light that falls on your hands right now, in the air around you, in every ordinary scene you have ever looked at and assumed you were seeing completely. You were seeing a version, a human version, narrow, three-colored, 60 frames per second, magnetically blind. A version that is, in the full context of what is physically present in visible light, approximately as complete as hearing a symphony through one wall of the concert hall. The music is there. Something is reaching you. But the full experience, the one the bird has, is something else entirely. Ancient cultures, separated by oceans and languages and completely different cosmological frameworks, nevertheless arrived at similar intuitions about birds. That they could see things humans couldn't. That they existed in a perceptual relationship with the world that was somehow more complete. Watching a bird navigate, find food, return home across impossible distances, respond to things in the environment that produced no perceptible signal, all of it pointed to a quality of seeing that exceeded the human version. They were right. Not in a mystical sense. In a physical, biological, scientifically documented sense. The birds were seeing more. They are still seeing more. Every bird you have ever watched moving through a landscape was moving through a version of that landscape that contained visual information you were constitutionally unable to access. And here is what that means on the most personal level. The next time you step outside and watch a bird move, watch it orient, watch it navigate, watch it respond to things in the environment that seem, to you, completely unremarkable. You are watching a creature experience a richer version of the same world you are standing in. Not a better creature, not a more conscious one, not a more important one, but one whose window onto reality is wider than yours in ways that have been real for millions of years, regardless of whether anyone was measuring them. You are sharing a world with beings that see it differently, more completely, in frequencies you cannot reach and at speeds you cannot follow, navigating by a field that is invisible to you and reading colors that have no names in any human language because no human has ever needed words for experiences they cannot have. The world is not what you see. It is what everything sees, all at once, all the time. And the bird has always known this. You cannot acquire a fourth cone type. You cannot increase your flicker fusion rate. You cannot grow the cryptochrome sensitivity that would let you see the magnetic field written into every landscape you have ever moved through. But you can do something that matters more than any of that. You can know that the limit exists. Because knowing that what you see is not all that is there, knowing that the light around you contains colors with no names, that the world moves at speeds your eyes cannot resolve, that the planet's magnetic field is a visible feature of reality for creatures sharing your space. That knowledge changes the quality of your attention. It makes the ordinary world strange again in the best possible sense. It restores the wonder that familiarity slowly, quietly removes. The bird on the wire is not in the background. It is a window into a version of the world you have never seen. A living reminder that the reality you inhabit is only the reality you can access. And that access, however rich it feels, is partial, is filtered, is a specific, limited, beautiful slice of something that goes further in every direction than you can follow. And perhaps there is something almost freeing in that, in accepting that the world is larger than your perception of it, that there are dimensions of beauty and complexity and presence that exist entirely outside your visual range, and that they exist anyway, real, present, physical, true, whether or not any human ever knew to look for them. The birds have been seeing them forever. I want to know, has there ever been a moment where you watched a bird navigate, or find something, or respond to something that seemed completely invisible to you, and felt that particular, specific wonder of knowing you were in the presence of a perception you couldn't share? Tell me in the comments. Because that feeling, that sense of standing at the edge of a world slightly larger than you can see, might be the most honest feeling available to us. And it turns out, it was never wrong.